first rank is the US and Hong Kong.
Yes.
And second is Singapore.
Third.
Third.
Because we called it,
okay.
yes.
And fourth and fifth?
Is Sweden. Sweden, fourth this year, surpassed Switzerland in fifth position. Sweden was a very resistant economy. It has a very strong emphasis on the globality of its companies, highly internationalized, doing some incredible work in the branding of Sweden. So it's a country that was able, it had one of the largest gaps between the very recessionary environment of 2008 and then 2009, and then a strong rebound of plus 5% growth in 2010. So we had this big swing, if you want, from a very low recessionary environment to a strong recovery. And this is quite significant for a country. And if you compare that to a country like Switzerland in fifth position, Switzerland is much more stable, but maybe not as resilient in times of recovery.
So apart from the US,
yes,
all the rest are like small countries, small nations.
Yes, in fact,
how come?
It's much more easy to manage the competitiveness of a small economy than it is a big economy, with the exception of the United States. But we also have a large economy like Australia that is in the top 10, and we also have Germany, which is in 10th position this year too. So Germany has been moving very rapidly up the competitiveness ladder for the dynamics of its manufacturing, the dynamics of its high value-added industry. Very much appreciated in Asia as well.
Is green technology the next wave?
I think a lot of countries are realizing the sustainability of competitiveness is going to be dependent on securing energy sources and reducing the vulnerability and the volatility, of course, due to the changes in commodity prices. But also the fact that to have sustainability, we need to start looking at alternative energy sources and also different energy sources and renewables and green energy. I think Thailand has put an important emphasis on focusing on green technologies and sustainability. And I think this is also going to be an important wave of the future. But it's not sufficient for the moment. It's very dangerous to also say, we can only go the direction of green technologies when we're still very much dependent on the carbons.
How can we encourage innovation?
We can encourage innovation by giving more support to the small and medium-sized enterprises, focusing on creating niche areas in higher value-added activities, giving more emphasis on the development of research and development in the private sector. For example, in Switzerland, we have 70% of R&D is in the private sector. So you have to foster the right type of environment for innovation. So this can be the mindset. This starts at a very young age in nurturing creativity in childhood, and at the same time giving the right legislative environment that is also going to enhance and nurture innovation.
How much does corruption play a role in obstructing competitiveness?
It's a very strong burden and hurdle to competitiveness. It's actually raising the cost of doing business for companies.
But some people would say, it's like oiling the wheel.
Yes, but in the long run, it's going to come back and have a backlash, because in the long run, I think that the younger generation are not going to be tolerant of this anymore. I think to be able for companies to attract the best talents, they have to realize that you really need to move away from corruptive activities, and I think it needs to be a grassroots movement. It has to come from within the companies themselves. It cannot be alone as directives from the government. The companies themselves have to decide they really want to be competitive without having to reduce themselves to corruptive activities. So I think it needs to be driven from the bottom up, and this is very, very important for strong governance within companies.
How much does the debt burden that some European countries have right now, that some European countries are facing right now?
Oh no, this is the dramatic
affects competitiveness.
Oh yes, it's very much dramatic in competitiveness, and it's dramatic in a long-term sense as well. If we look at the competitiveness of Greece, in the last few years it has fallen about 20 places in the ranking. This is quite significant. Same thing with Ireland. Ireland used to be number 5 in competitiveness in 2000, and it's now down in the 20s. So it shows you have to be very careful with competitiveness. You can rise quickly to the top. We saw China has been moving progressively in competitiveness, but it's very difficult to sustain competitiveness in the long run, because there's so many different dynamic factors that are playing against each other. It's very much a systemic model of interrelated activities. So you have to be very, very careful that you're laying the foundations for future competitiveness. So that's investment in human capital, it's investment in technology, infrastructure, a strong base for financial capital and access to capital, entrepreneurship as well, I think are very, very critical to future competitiveness.
So is it okay to conclude that if a country has a financial problem, debt crisis, then the rank of competitiveness would drop?
Yes, it's very correct to say so. Whether it's short-term or long-term is going to depend on how that debt crisis is going to be managed. I'm afraid that for countries like Greece, Portugal, even to some extent Spain and Ireland and even maybe Italy, unless they start managing those crises in a more sustainable manner by paying off that debt, but also learning to live within one's means, then I probably don't think that they're going to be moving up in the rankings in the near future.
In which areas do you think that Thailand should improve on?
I think bringing these infrastructure gaps, trying to close them would be one important move. Trying to improve the attractiveness of the business environment for foreign direct investment. Of course, you cannot have competitiveness just based on foreign direct investment, harnessing foreign investment. You also have to produce indigenous technology and innovation. I think this is a long-term challenge for Thailand. I would say focusing on creating a nurturing environment for small and medium-sized enterprises. Making it easy for businesses to compete. So that means bringing down the legislative burden, focusing on predictability. If we always say if there's anything that investors hate more, it's unpredictability and uncertainty. So bringing more confidence to the business community and to foreign investors. Those are maybe the critical areas for Thailand. Bringing more. Trying to focus on the educational category as well. There's room for improvements also in education, and also some societal factors that need to be improved upon as well. The long-term aiming for inclusive growth, environmental sustainability as well.
Hopefully, Thailand will improve on its weak points, such as education or IT network, in order to improve its competitiveness, so that in the end, that would all translate into the prosperity for the people. See you next week. For now, สวัสดีค่ะ